I'm gonna start. Good luck.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to another session of our Global Teachers Festival 2026. We have lots of attendees coming in. Hi from Mexico, Lithuania. Good morning, Erika. From Poland, from Peru. Hi, Marlene. Hi, Rosana. Hi, Raquel. From Spain, Vietnam, Romania. Oh, lots of people, lots of messages too. From Bulgaria, Thailand, Swiss. Hi, Michael. From Poland, from Kazakhstan, Slovakia, Mexico too, Basque Country, Guatemala, from Brazil. Hi, Marsha. Hi, Amalia, from Argentina. Oh, lots of messages. From Moldova. Hi, Araceli. Oh, so many messages, so many messages. Lots and lots of teachers coming in. I'm so glad. I'm going to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Martin. I'm the academic coordinator for Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and Bolivia. But I'm based in Lima, and I'm going to be your host. Again, I was a host yesterday too, and it was a lot of fun. Lots of teachers participating. Remember that you can use the chat to enter your questions. I'll be taking notes and just use it as much as you can because these webinars, they become more and more exciting as you participate more too. Okay, nice to see you too, Grace, Ana Karen. Hi from Peru. Yeah, so nice to see some people, some familiar names too. Hi, Marisol. How are you doing? Gulshan, how are you doing? Mercedes, Nana from Georgia. We have teacher from San Luis Potosí in Mexico too, from Uruguay, Myanmar, from Barcelona. Nice. Vietnam. We have Miss Dora from Peru too. Italy, Mexico, Georgia, Chile. Nice. Hi, Rebecca. From Saudi Arabia too. From Malaysia. Okay, amazing, amazing. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. So I just want to ask you, can you hear me well? Yeah, is the sound okay? Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, great. So this is our 2026 Global Teachers Festival. It already started on the 9th and we are continuing until the 20th. So lots of information, very exciting for everyone. This is the program. On day one, on Monday, we talked about digital innovation. Day two, it was really exciting too, with Rodrigo and Eduardo talking about first steps. Day three, that was yesterday, we had a debate on how accurate does your English need to be in the world of work. And we also had Evan Frendo talking about preparing university learners for real workplace English. And today, the main topic is going to be human innovation. Okay, we have two speakers. We have Armanda Stroia and Mike Rowley. Okay, they'll be talking about something related to human innovation. It's been really great the first session, so this second session, I'm hoping that is as exciting. And before we start, I want to remind you that you're going to get your certificate and your virtual goodie bag in 2 weeks. Okay, so check your emails, the ones that you use to register. And if you have any problems, please email us. You can use this email, which is eltwebinars@macmillaneducation.com, eltwebinars@macmillaneducation.com. Okay, so these are our speakers for today. We have Armanda Stroia, Rethinking ELT in the Age of Digital Fast Food, Atomic Habits for Critical Media Literacy, and then we have Mike Rowley, Remaining Projects, a Design Thinking Template for Engaged Teen Learning. And we already have our first speaker here, Armanda Stroia. Hi, Armanda.
Hello, hello. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you before we start?
Well, of course. I'm really excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite topics, critical media literacy. I'm a researcher, a teacher at heart, teacher trainer, and I also serve on the IATEFL Materials Writing SIG committee in order to support ELT materials writers and educators worldwide. And I'm very happy to see so many teachers from all around the world. So hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for taking time to be here with us.
Great.
And to learn more, to contribute. The first session was really engaging, so I hope to see the same energy level in the chat. Feel free to write your comments, to engage, okay?
Awesome, and I'll be taking notes, so at the end we can have a little Q&A, okay?
Of course, definitely.
Awesome, so Armanda, the floor is yours. I leave you to it.
Okay, can I please, I cannot share my screen. You cannot start screen. Probably there is something there. Now, yes, now that's okay.
Yes. Awesome.
So thank you. Before we start, can you please write in the chat if you can see my slide and if you can hear me well? Let's see. Type yes, yes, if you can see me and hear me well before we start. Okay, let's see. Is it visible, my screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Now, before we dive into our learners' complicated relationship with media, let's try to brainstorm together some of the problems they're facing right now. Okay, so you have these visual clues. Can you try to guess some of their problems with media nowadays? I can give you some other clues if you need. For example, the first phenomenon, yes, is referring to the habit of continually scrolling through and reading depressing, worrying news, especially on your phone, on their phones. While the second one, the second phenomenon, is connected to some, well, trends on the internet with some slang terms, like maybe you've heard about some 6, 7. I think every teacher has heard about this. So learners mindlessly repeating something which is, trendy online. What do you think? What do you think are these problems? Let's see. I cannot see in the chat, okay? The first one is doom scrolling, okay? And this leads to emotional exhaustion, right? The second one, as you might have guessed, is connected with brain rot, which leads to passive consumption without any type of reflection. So this brings me to our media diet problem. So let's try to picture your learner's media diet. What kind of digital content feels like this? Feels like, digital fast food. Let's see. What type of content? The digital burgers or donuts? So many messages. Let me see if I can see them now. Yes. Okay. Actually, some of the teachers from the previous session told me cat videos. Yes. What else? Let's see, what else? Junk food. Yes, Marlene, junk food, unhealthy food. What type of digital content feels like this? Let's try to break this down and question the ingredients. TikTok, exactly. Reels, yes, Instagram, short videos, viral TikToks. Yes, maybe even celebrity gossip. Yes, it's totally addictive. It's engineered to be that way, right? Maybe fake news, exactly. Sensational headlines. So it makes you feel full for a minute, but it's zero nutritional value, right? AI videos, AI generated videos, cat videos, absolutely. Reese, yes, you remember I told you about this. Okay, so these digital snacks offer high dopamine levels, but these are served by algorithms just to trigger emotional reactions, right? And now another question for you, right? If you had to, I don't know, to think about your last 24 hours, what would be the ratio between digital fast food and, nutritious media content, like quality information, slow cooked meal, which makes you think, are you 90-10, 50-50, or just 50-50? Yes. Actually, we're not here to judge, okay? We are here to help our learners and ourselves become aware of our media habits. Okay, we've all been there, down the rabbit hole, yes, of scrolling. Okay, so what can we do about this? Well, I can use, this is something I love, digital vitamin C. What's your vitamin C against fake news, against misinformation? What's something that can help you reduce those cravings for junk food, digital junk food? Reading books, okay. It starts with C. Let's see, what can it be? Yeah, I love books. Critical thinking, okay. Cooking, fact checking, great options. Okay, so it is critical media literacy. And it doesn't need to be sophisticated, right? We all have heard about critical media literacy, but hopefully this webinar will get you a better perspective of what is critical media literacy and maybe what is not. And then together we'll explore a new approach, atomic habits, to try to implement this into your classrooms and give you a powerful starter toolkit you can use with your learners. Okay, so ready? Let's try to understand better what is critical media literacy about. We've all heard about it, but are we actually doing this in our classrooms? Let's try an experiment. What can you see first here? Let's see, what can you see? A duck, okay, a bird. What else? A rabbit, good. What about here? Let's see, what can you see here? A girl, okay. What else can you see? A young lady, a woman also, good. So, both perspectives. Now you might be wondering, okay, Armanda, what's the connection between these informational illusions, okay, and critical media literacy? Well, I think it's a powerful analogy to help you picture critical media literacy as a tool to help your learners unsee, and I love this word, unsee informational illusions, to help them, check information from multiple angles, verify the reliability. And media is very good at framing. So I love when I try this experiment in my classes with learners or with teachers. Some of them cannot see the second perspective. But when I guide them, see, look, this can be the nose and the chin of the woman. They say, oh, my goodness, there is an old woman there. So it's empowering to see when they can notice another perspective. See what's happening? Media is all about framing. If you give a frame, you can see a different perception. Yes, a reality. Fantastic. Now, lateral thinking, absolutely. What about this visual? What do you think is this visual about? Any ideas? See? AI, coding, data, matrix, technology, very close. Matrix. Okay, digital media. You're very close. It is an algorithm operating with hexadecimal numbers. And I think this visual manages to capture in a very powerful way a thought-provoking idea by historian Yuval Harari in his famous book Nexus, you might have heard about. And historian Harari argues that we are evolving into something shaped, not necessarily into something smarter or wiser. I know it doesn't sound flattery, but into something which he calls Homo algorithmicus. So what defines Homo algorithmicus? Well, when our decisions are influenced by predictions, by algorithms, they are actually the chefs, right, behind everything. And think about it like this. They are designed to serve you the most delicious digital fast food, yes, ever, the most engaging, because the goal is not to give you nutritious meal, but to keep you engaged. Unfortunately, nowadays, engagement matters most than accuracy. Okay, so we need to be very careful about this idea and to train our learners. So what is critical media literacy? It's the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, we've seen information from multiple points of view, and most importantly, help them create and act. Most people think that critical media literacy is all about deconstructing, analyzing media messages. But it is very important to know how to create your own responses, counter narratives. And we'll see in a few minutes how we can actually do this in our classrooms, okay? So another worry is that, well, you might say, we are English teachers, why should we teach critical media literacy? We don't have time. We all know we have the pressure of exams, right? We have overloaded curricula. So when do we have time for this? And why should we teach critical media literacy? Well, if you look around, I think the response is obvious. We live in this media-saturated world. Media is everywhere, right? And I love this phrase, it has become the digital wallpaper of life. Media is teaching our learners what to think, okay, what to wear, what to say. So I think it's so important to be there and to guide our learners with the right tools to take their own decisions, to become responsible, yes, critical thinkers, not just consumers, passive consumers. Another common myth about media literacy is that it's often, seen as a sophisticated framework, something maybe for, for students, academics, not necessarily for the real, classroom. But I'll show you that it's actually really easy to implement. I came to this realization that critical media literacy is not a topic. It is a habit. It's what we do every single lesson. We don't have to have just one project on fake news and then students forget about this, right? What about having powerful micro routines, 3 to 5 minutes, in which we'll see some tools to help our learners to deconstruct and question what they see. And you might say, well, critical media literacy teaches you what to think. Actually, you'll see it gives your learners the tools to help them how to think, how to take, a responsible, informed decisions. So let's see, how can we do this? Let's see, how can we, shift from something which feels like time consuming to something which is doable in our lessons. And this brings us to a new approach, atomic habits. You might be familiar with this idea from James Clear's Atomic Habits, right? And I tried to adapt this for our topic. I think we don't need a new unit or a new curriculum, right? Maybe we need just powerful micro routines. As I was saying before, if we keep this analogy with food, right? If you only change your food, you want to eat healthily, right? And you change once a year, you eat healthily. Does this mean that you have a healthy lifestyle? Not at all, right? What about changing what's on your plate every single day? Start small. And let's see, how can we do this in our own classrooms? Okay? First, we need to understand something very powerful. It's called the habit loop. What is this? It's the engine which drives every single behavior, the good one, the bad one, all of our behaviors. Actually, it's a simple 4-step neurological process. For example, we have this cue, right? It can be a delicious digital cookie or fast food, which in our case can be something like a sensational headline or viral post. And what is the craving here? Well, these are designed to trigger emotional reactions, right? Maybe fear, maybe anger, maybe curiosity, outrage. And what happens? What happens? Well, we want to see what's there. So we click, right? We scroll. And we try to, even sometimes without reading. And what's the reward in our case? Can you guess what's the reward here after we click? Any ideas? Usually, when you click to see what's there, you get that, high intense dopamine, right? Intense level of dopamine, very, very short. And that's it. That's all. And then you go down the rabbit hole of scrolling. Satisfaction, exactly. And then I was thinking, how can we adapt this habit loop? How can we re-engineer it to serve our, purpose, to become critical thinkers? Well, the question is, what can we do when we see these triggers, right? With these popular videos, TikToks, viral headlines. Well, when we see those cues, maybe it's a signal for fact checking on, right? Check mode on. And then maybe we can encourage our learners to crave something different. To crave, for example, I want to be in control. I want to be a critical thinker. I want to, I don't want to be manipulated. And then they pause. And the response should be to question. Okay, pause and question. Simple questions like, who is behind the message? Who benefits? Who's left out? How does this make me feel? Right? And the response in our case is going to be, again, dopamine hit, but also most importantly, we are empowering our learners with voice, with agency. And this is what we want, right? They say, okay, I can distinguish between fact and manipulation because I stopped, okay, before sharing. This is basically the model. I think it's important to have this mind shift, right? Usually we are focused on outcomes, right? What if instead of going in our classrooms and say, today we are going to analyze news media, what if you're trying to say, today you're becoming media detectives or fake news detectives, okay? Because you are the type of person who asks smart questions if they are younger learners. See what happens here? Basically, this is a small shift, but you're rewriting their internal story. Why? Because if you read this book, you'll understand that habits, they stick only when they match your identity, your core values. Only then you can have real, impactful change, right? Until then, you can't. So let's try to open a toolkit to see what can we actually do in our classrooms to implement these ideas. And the first tool, I love it. It's a fantastic one, a quick tool for lateral reading. I remember you mentioned, some of you in the chat, about lateral reading. And it's called SIFT. Can you guess, can you type in the chat, what do you think is SIFT? How can we sift media messages? What do you think it stands for? Let's see. Any ideas? S, maybe. Yeah, let's see. Filtering. I love this. Yes, filtering. What else? What do you think? I have no idea. We'll see. If you're curious, I'll show you in a few moments. Checking, analyzing. S is for stop. Bingo. Now, well done. Screening, clarity, understanding, stay in control, scanning info, filtering. Okay, fantastic. So you are right. The first one is stop. Okay. So literally pause before you react. Teach your learners to pause, stop before they share. Then investigate. Okay. And I don't mean just turn into a Sherlock Holmes, right? And get lost into investigating down the rabbit hole, but just investigate who's behind the message, right? And then try to find, trace, okay? Try to see who's covering this. Open some tabs, see who's reporting on this. And finally, trace. Trace the claim back to the original post. Trace the evidence. Exactly, Karina. Well done. Follow them back. So this is a super quick way to force your learners to think instead of just reacting, right? And I think the first step in this framework, in this tool, stop or pause, it's very powerful. Why? Why do you think it's very powerful? Well, according to research, many people just share even without reading, just based on their headlines. Can you guess the percentage of people who share, and young people who share? 80, 90%, 20, 70, spot on. More than 70% of people actually share before reading. That's staggering, right? It's incredible because we don't even click the link, but we share, right? And then we contribute to these viral posts. So it's important to help our learners ask these powerful questions. Who is behind the message? What's the agenda? What are the emotions? okay, and check the evidence. So let's do a little something I like to call headline surgery. What is headline surgery? Well, here's our patient. It's a biased, emotionally loaded headline. Just look at those words. Take control. This frames a very specific power dynamic. We dissected, rewrite the story. Yes, it's a word specifically chosen. Look at dangerous. It's specifically chosen to make you feel what? Dangerous, to make you feel afraid. Exactly, fear, right? So what can you do with your learners? Ask them to, take away these emotional loaded words, right? And let's see, here's the headline after successful surgery. Okay, so see how all the bias framing and those emotional triggers are just gone away. Now it's neutral, let's say, and this version doesn't tell you how to feel, right? It just gives you the basic facts, right? So learners can decide for themselves what to think. Okay, so that word dangerous from the headline, that leads us right into our next tool, which I love this, and it's called Emotional Adjectives Hunt. So let's go hunting, but we'll hunt for, emotionally loaded words. And see words like this: shocking, outrageous, terrifying, or, even breaking news. They literally hijack our brains and bypass our rational thought. And I remember while doing my PhD a couple of years ago, I loved, analyzing these journalistic cliches and finding out what they're trying to feel or to send, the social aim behind it. So what can you do with your learners? Ask them to take away the junk food ingredients, all the sensational verbs, the emotional adjectives, right? This is very easy to do. Just takes a couple of minutes. You can give them some, pieces of news, headlines. And what else? Maybe a big question mark, a question toolkit. I love this question toolkit, and it's designed around 6 conceptual areas from critical media scholars Kellner and Scher. What is this question about? Let's see the first puzzle. I gave my students literally a question mark. And the first one addresses the idea of authorship. Who is behind the media text, right? Is it a person, a company, or maybe a non-human agent, right, these days? Once they understand who's behind the message, then help your learners think about the format, right? How is the media message built to grab their attention? Well, think about the techniques, right? What techniques are used? Sound, color, layout, editing, maybe sometimes slow motion, yes, upbeat music, bright colors. Our learners need to understand that in media messages, nothing is accidental. Every stylistic, yes, as you said, every stylistic choice is designed with a target audience in their mind, right? And once our learners understand how the message is engineered, right, to trigger their curiosity, now maybe we can ask another powerful question. What ideas, what values are represented? And maybe even more importantly, whose stories are missing? whose voices are silenced there, okay? Which leads to the aim behind the text, okay? Why was this message created? Maybe there is, I know, a political aim, or maybe a commercial one. Maybe it's trying to make us, buy something. There's always a reason behind a media message. And this leads to the social justice, right? Such questions allow learners to reflect on the concept of social justice and examine who benefits from the message, who is harmed, and how media, how media can reinforce or challenge inequality. So you can actually have this question mark. Maybe you can work in teams. You can have these teams. I usually do this. I give these guiding questions. I ask my learners to work in teams, have a piece of media, and then they analyze together. So let's analyze together a very, very short media ad on Philadelphia cheese, which was banned, by the way. Can you tell me why was it banned? Let's see. Okay, so let's see if you can you hear? Okay, can you hear? Let's see now.
That's it. Wow, look at this lunch. Yeah, on the cheese. Oh, this thing's good. That's the Philadelphia. Yeah. Let's not tell mom.
Oh, let's not tell mom. That's the final part. Okay, so why do you think it was banned? Why? Because, well, they complained that actually it portrays dads as incapable caregivers, right? What happened? They were so attracted by the delicious cream cheese that they forgot their toddlers on the conveyor belt, right? So that's why they complained. Well, you cannot, it's a harmful gender stereotype. Yes. However, if you put on the marketer's hat, and if you think, how can this media message be interpreted in a different way by different audiences? They say, well, we tried to portray fathers, well, as involved with kids, actively involved in a positive light. See, two different perspectives. This is only one example. So until now, we've had some fun analyzing together, deconstructing media messages, but this is not enough. We need to shift from passive, consumption and deconstructive to actively creating media responses. What can we do in our classrooms? For example, what do you think happens when influencers, TikTok influencers, partner with scholars, with critical media scholars? Well, they create powerful short infomercials to address fake news. Are you curious to see? How is this possible? Let's see. And this can serve as a source of inspiration for your learners. Okay.
Hold it right there. This claim sounds fishy. Before you go any further, you're going to want to question the source.
Our source investigator will help you identify the source.
Are you having trouble knowing what to believe on the internet? You're in luck. I can help. It's time to ask questions. Let's identify the source and verify the credibility of the author. Aha! Just as I suspected, a bogus source. Now that's how you do it. Good work.
Sam Star, source investigator.
Remember to identify the source, verify the credibility of the author, and always ask questions. And report accounts or content that spreads false or misleading information.
Okay, so very, very short, one media, counter media response, right? Share this with your learners, challenge them to create 1 minute counter media to, address fake news. You'll be surprised how creative they can be. And let me share with you a real classroom example. So I challenge my learners to create a 1 minute counter media to address this time stereotypes. And I helped them, I scaffolded this task a bit. For example, ads, they have 3 parts. First, identifying a problem, okay? Then you have the solution, and they brainstormed these unstereotyping glasses. And then we have a call to action. And you'll see in a few minutes how this looks like. I had a group of a team, 4 or 5 students working together. One was the media expert putting together the storyboard. One was the script writer, and you'll see the actor who brought these ideas to life. Are you curious to see how one counter media looks like in a real classroom? Let's see. Detective glasses. Let's see now.
Aren't you tired of seeing stereotypes everywhere you look? Aren't you tired of seeing people being put into boxes? How many times have you heard people say things like, Asians are always good at math, boys shouldn't cry, or immigrants are uneducated, girls can't learn science? Wondering, how can we break free from all of these labels? Drum rolls, please. Introducing the unstereotyping glasses, designed not to change how you see, but how you understand the world. Wear these glasses every day to see beyond labels. Are you ready to truly see the world? These glasses are priceless. You can only buy them with empathy and kindness.
Okay, so one challenge, 1 minute counter media challenge. Okay, so this is possible. See, it's possible in your classrooms. You just need to challenge your learners to be, you'll be amazed how creative they can be. So it's all about these tiny, consistent habits. And here is a 3 habit starter you can use in your classrooms. For example, on Monday, pick just 1 news story and perform headline surgery, if you remember, okay? On Wednesday, maybe find 1 social media post and do a quick emotional adjective hunt. And on Friday, maybe before your learners share that viral video everyone is talking about, just give it a quick sift, okay? Just sift, you remember, sift the media messages. See, just 3 tiny actions to start building a powerful new habit in your classrooms, right? So I think that this can be your atomic recipe. First, to wrap up, remember, recognize the diet, right? The fast food nature of our diet. Then shift your mindset from big heroic projects to micro routines in your classrooms. And then question the ingredients. Do you remember the sift, the surgery, the headline surgery, maybe the adjective hunt? Just a few ideas you can use in your classrooms. And finally, most importantly, cook your own. Teach your learners to cook their own media, right? Create 1 minute counter media to help them find their own voice, okay? So this, I think, leaves us with a final powerful question. And if you are curious and ready to start implementing this in your classrooms, you can scan these codes, QR codes, and you'll find ready-to-use lesson plans, ideas, frameworks here that can be really helpful for ideas, okay? Even on brain rot, lesson plans, on social media news. So finally, I will leave you with this. big question. Are we going to let the algorithms do the thinking for our learners, or are we going to give them the tools to help them think, question, and most importantly, create? Well, the choice really is ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Armanda. That was really inspiring. It started a little scary because, social media is scary, especially for little
is.
kids. But I really liked this, the similarity that you did with fast food and digital fits, because it is. I never thought of it like that. And
Thank you so much.
also, and also when you talked about habits, because we've heard that social media can be scary and dangerous and everything, but those little habits and those little tips that you gave us for the classroom, I thought that they were amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Armanda.
Thank you. Thank you for your engagement. Look at this. So many hearts.
Mhm.
I can feel it from the screen, beyond the screen. Thank you for all your ideas, for contributing. I think it's so important to understand and to make the first step, to start small. That's what matters, because we have so many resources out there. We just need to to be brave enough and start small, because we can shape critical thinkers. It's our responsibility, I think.
Exactly. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Armanda.
I think I need to share the codes again. I see in
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah.
Let me see the. Okay, let me try to.
And for the
share.
teachers, remember that you're going to get a goodie bag with your certificate in a couple of weeks, and you're going to find these QR codes too. So in
Yes.
case you miss them or whatever, you can go there, check your email, open your goodie bag. You're going to find this and other surprises.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for your
No problem.
contribution. It's
Thank you, Armanda.
amazing.
Yeah, lots of people.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Armanda. See you soon.
See you.
Okay, so after this very inspiring presentation, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, here it is, and I'm going to be introducing our second speaker. And this is Mike Rowley. Mike is here with us right now. So, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Martin. Yeah, I really enjoyed Amanda's speech there, I must say. That was a great session. Yeah, I've been working in the education field in ELT for 2 decades now, working with schools, school levels, all different levels. I also I'm an author for Macmillan, so I'm usually working a lot on projects and stuff. Today we're going to be focusing on teen learning, so hopefully I've got some insights to bring into that. But first and foremost, I'm a teacher as well, and I think that's going to be the most important, framework that I'm going to be using to present these ideas today. So that's my first and foremost passion, being a teacher and learning. And it's lovely to see everyone here. I'm very excited to get started.
Awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll leave you to it, Mike.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, guys, and we will jump in. Okay, hopefully that's all good. I'm going to open the chat as well. I want to be able to see what everyone's saying. I'll try and address everyone's comments as they come in. We'll see what we can do. Perfect. Very good. Okay, so, well, I've already introduced myself, so I think we can move on from that. We are talking about reimagining projects with design thinking, and especially for the engaged teen learner. So that's going to be a word that we talk about a lot in this session, which is engagement. I think we can all agree as teachers that if you can get that engagement, if you can get the students into what you're teaching, most of the battle is won. your class will probably go very well if you get that engagement. But we also know, I'm sure, that it's not so easy to get. Can be a challenge. So something I'm going to show you today is one way of increasing that engagement. And we're going to be really focusing on these two things. So project-based learning is one element. If we think about it, this is the activity that we're going to be doing in the class. This is when we do a project with our class, which could be one class or two or three classes, but some sort of special project. Quite similar to what Amanda mentioned, perhaps, about doing the counter media video, for example. That would be a brilliant project to do. And then we're going to talk about design thinking, which is the approach, more like the methodology. So these two things combine beautifully. And hopefully today, I'm going to give you a few practical ideas of how these combine very well and how you can do this in class. Also, I'm going to be showing you some real examples of material that use this methodology, and also a template that I hope you can take and try next week in your classes, or maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, so still got time. Even this week, you could even start thinking about this. Let's get into it. We're going to start by talking about project-based learning, first of all. So I love project-based learning because for me as a teacher, it allows me to put many different things that I love to have in my classroom. Let's go through some of those things. These are not all of them, but some of them. First one is universal design for learning. Now, UDL, as we call it, is something that we're seeing more and more now in course books. And it's something that most people agree works very well in basically teaching students to think about how they learn, right? Asking them questions. How do you learn? How do you learn better? I remember when I was at school in England in the 80s and 90s, nobody asked me questions like that. You know, how do you learn better, Mike? You know, how do you remember things better? How are you enjoying this? How are you progressing? Nobody ever asked me that. And I think it's wonderful that we're starting to implement this. Project-based learning is a brilliant opportunity to do that. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Obviously, critical thinking, as Amanda also talked about a lot in her session. Critical thinking can also be brought to the fore with project-based learning. It's a brilliant opportunity to encourage critical thinking, not just from the student, but also from the teacher point of view, the way that we think as teachers when we're planning our lessons and our courses. This is a brilliant way of getting that in, and we'll be talking about that in more detail today. Also, brilliant for the flipped classroom. Now, this is where we can give some material, some media, some reading or listening or videos or some kind of preparation before the class. Obviously, project-based learning is ideal for this, right? So a brilliant way to have your students research something before the class begins, and then you're ready to go when the project starts. I love doing this in my classes. So flipped classroom, absolutely perfect for project-based learning. It also encourages, let's say, the discovery method, right? Hopefully, the students will be practicing some language that you've recently told them or shown them or taught them. And they might just have that amazing moment where they discover how something works. They'll use a phrase and be like, oh, yeah, okay, I get how it works now. Obviously, we're looking for that all the time, but project-based learning is amazing for having that discovery method sort of pop up as the project progresses. Really, really nice when that happens. I love it. The next point, confidence building, not for the learner, but I mean also for the teacher. I think if we take on a project, it can be a bit daunting, and we're going to talk about those challenges shortly. But I think confidence building also for ourselves as teachers can happen in project-based learning. Sometimes the satisfaction, having something so tangible, a result, a real finished project, like the video that Amanda showed, right? Absolutely amazing. And I think that's a really great thing to do, not just for the learner, but also for us teachers. And then, of course, the final one are global skills. Now, global skills are something that we are talking a lot more about in ELT these days, and for good reason. You know, we're talking about citizenship, you know, thinking about sort of social responsibility and intercultural skills. And of course, in projects, we have an absolutely amazing opportunity to implement that too. So I think we can agree for the teacher, project-based learning can be really fun, but also extremely useful and effective as well. What about for the learner? Okay, a lot of these will overlap, of course. A lot of the benefits for the teacher are very similar for the student, but let's have a look at them. First and foremost, I think the project-based learning approach is very task-based. So there's an objective, and this can really help get the engagement up. You know, there's a mission, there's an objective to do. It's very tangible, as I mentioned already. And I think that can really help increase engagement, which we love. Critical thinking, of course, this is something where, you know, we can implement this for the student too, and get them really thinking differently about something. And when I mention design thinking later, of course, that's going to really tie in with this point. Purpose. It gives us a purpose to the class. You know, I think it's really fun to design a project for your class. It takes time, for sure. It's not quick, it's not easy. But once you've designed a good one, I think having that purpose to the class, again, will just really help motivating your learners. Differentiation, of course, this allows us to have different types. You know, I remember when I first started teaching, people used to talk about dynamic classes. And I used to wonder, what does that mean? What is a dynamic class? And I think really what it means is that the class has different parts and different phases and different input. And I think that's what makes an interesting class. You could have some reading, but then some listening, then some production, then some more input, then perhaps a bit micro analysis of language, then macro. Obviously, in project-based learning, we have lots of opportunities to differentiate the way we're delivering that input and our teaching as well. Confidence building, as I already mentioned, of course, this is great for the learner as well. And it links to my final point here as well, which is self-efficacy. Now, this came out of a study decades ago in Canada, I believe. And basically, the idea of self-efficacy is that feeling of being able to do something. It's when a learner can say, I can do this. I know I can do this. I trust in myself. Of course, that's very similar to confidence, but self-efficacy is really having that your own authority to do something. And I think when you do a project, you've got a great opportunity to really promote that. And essentially, self-efficacy will increase engagement. It's almost automatic, which again, we love engagement. That's what we kind of want to get to. Someone said self-agency, absolutely as well. It's a really, really good way to empower the learners if we do it right. So let's talk about project-based learning in a bit more detail. How and where does it fit into your course? Now, we had a question on this in the last session. They said, well, could this be over the whole year? You know, could this be once a month? You know, where does it fit? Now, obviously, it's up to you. You could do a year-long project, but you could also do one at the end of the unit. Now, in most of the course books that we work in Macmillan, for example, we tend to have them at the end of the unit. And I think with good reason. It gives us an opportunity to review, obviously, the language that we've been learning in the pages previously. And hopefully, the students will kind of use those themes and topics and ideas, new language, vocabulary, toward the end of that unit to kind of like finish the unit. And I think that really works well. But there's no wrong or right answer here. I think you could have a year-long project as well, and it would work very, very nicely. You'd have to manage it very well, keep the motivation up. It'd be a good challenge. But my recommendation would be to do it sort of at the end of the unit, as you know, a lot of the course books and the one we're going to see today as well have. So I would ask yourself these questions, very simple questions, but very fundamental. And please put your answers in the chat. I'm looking at what you're saying here. It's great. Fantastic participation. So yes, you're like a good class. It's fantastic. This is what we want. The first question is, have you tried project-based learning? You know, maybe you haven't tried it before. Maybe it's a bit intimidating. Has it been good? Has it been a disaster? I know I've done one before that was a complete disaster. You know, I didn't plan it well. We've all been there, guys, let's be honest. But when you do it well, wow, it really works. It is challenging, yes. Careful planning. Good. Okay, lots of people saying. Challenge, when working in groups, some students take advantage of the others. Yeah, we're going to talk about this. That's a really good one. Yeah, interdisciplinary. Yeah, exact differentiation. Fantastic. Works well if it's planned well. Yes. Yes. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to talk about the challenges in a minute, so we'll come to some of those. But these are great ideas, guys. I hope you're all checking in the chat as well. The second question to ask yourself, of course, is how will the learners benefit, right? This must be something relevant to them. It must be something important to them, especially for teen learners, right? I think teen learners, their personality, their likes, their opinions are really starting to take hold in their character. And I think that's something really important to consider. It has to be something which really kind of captures their imagination and obviously motivate them and get that engagement in the class. Yeah, someone said there, they're able to see their strengths and what they're good at. That's it, exactly. And that's brilliant. Now, the final question we're going to talk about in more detail. What challenges does it bring? Now, some of you already mentioned a few of these, which is great. So the challenges, okay, let's be honest, right? Doing a project-based learning, it's not something you want to do every single week. I mean, that would be a real challenge. It might work well, but I think it would be very, very hard. Let's have a look at some of the challenges that I've got here, and we'll talk about them. It's difficult to assess. Yes, can be. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm reading your comments. They're really good. So the first challenge I think, of course, is preparation. As somebody mentioned, it's a lot more preparation than, let's say, a regular, more traditional class, let's say. I think running a project with a group definitely takes more preparation. You'll probably end up looking like this person in the photograph, papers everywhere, trying to make, clarity out of the chaos. But it's worth it. The next challenge, now someone mentioned this about participation. Yes, your control over the roles of all of the students. Now, I understand, guys, that this could be a real challenge. If you've got groups with 30, 35 students, this is going to take absolute maximum effort on the teacher's part, right? But I know it can work. I've seen this in action and it can. We have to think about the role of every single student in that classroom so that we can make sure that everybody is participating and they have the chance to participate. So as a teacher, we have to be very proactive and very active as well in the class while doing a project. That's definitely a challenge. As I mentioned before, the purpose, we have to have something that really interests them, something that's relevant to them and important to them as well. Someone said here, not really, it's more effective in larger classes. Yeah, I agree. That's exactly. I've seen it in action. It can work. I'm glad. That's good. Now, of course, we also have to consider that there is language learning happening, right? Of course, we don't want them just speaking in their first language. We want them to be learning language. That's why we're here at the end of the day. So that's something also we have to consider, and it is absolutely a challenge. And then the last one, and this is the one we're really going to be focusing on today, because we're talking about a template that you can use, and that's the structure. The structure of the project is vitally important because if you don't have the structure, it will fall apart completely. And this is where the second part of the presentation of my session today we'll talk about, and that's design thinking. So if you haven't heard of design thinking before, do not worry. It's a very simple concept, but it's a beautiful process to approach a solution, to find a solution, to approach a problem, to do a project, to design something, but not necessarily design. It's basically an approach. It's basically a methodology. Now, design thinking came out of this guy, Herbert Simon, back in 1969. This was sort of first mentioned at MIT. Then it was developed by a company called IDEO and then Stanford University. And this quote kind of summarizes it. Design as changing existing situations into preferred ones. So the way I would explain it, and I'm going to go into more detail here, but design thinking is essentially being very intentional and very conscious about how you're approaching a problem. So let's have a look at a small diagram to kind of demonstrate what this is. What happened was that this philosophy was starting to be talked about. People were using it in companies and design, but also problem solving. And essentially, Stanford and IDEO, this company, they made it into 5 steps. Before we look at the 5 steps, let's talk about what it is not. So this is something I think is interesting. This is the opposite of what design thinking is. It's not unstructured, right? It's not just a random kind of brainstorming and, get some ideas. And it's not just about design, right? Even though it has it in the title, it's not about graphic design or anything like that. It's not about aesthetics. And it's not just for creative people. It's not about subjective opinion either. It's definitely not a shortcut or guesswork or risk averse. Design thinking is none of these things. It's almost the opposite. And now I'm going to show you a diagram which really shows what it is. Before I do that, I'm going to read this quote, sorry. So before we get into design thinking and project-based learning, I want you to think about this quote, which I really, really like, from Prabhjot Singh, Director of System Design at the Earth Institute. And I think this is something we should remember in all of our teaching, not just in projects. He said, "We spend a lot of time designing the bridge, but not enough time thinking about the people who are crossing it." Now, I love this because it's also about learner-centric teaching. It's about thinking about the student first and what they really need and adapting our teaching to our class. Not easy, I know, but definitely more effective than prescriptive teaching, which is just like, look at this, open the page, do this activity, right? That was like my math class at school. And I think this also links perfectly to design thinking, because it's all about thinking about the final user, the person who will experience the project, and designing your ideas around that audience. And that's a really different approach. So thinking about the people crossing the bridge, not the design of the bridge itself only. So here we have it. Now, design thinking in 5 steps. As you can see, we've got 5 steps in a circle. The first one is empathize. The second one is define. The third is ideate, then prototype, and finally test. Now, this is in a circle because you can go back. And that's something that we, first of all, need to stress to the students. This is not a checklist. It's not one by one. The idea is that you would start here, you will move, but if necessary, go back. And that's something that is a really important part of critical thinking. The ability to say, maybe I'm not correct here. Maybe we should go back and try this part again. And that's great design thinking. Now, the different steps, and I am going to show you a practical example of this in a classroom. So don't worry if it looks a bit overwhelming at the moment. But the first step, empathize, is all about listening. It's about observing, interviewing, learning about the audience. So let's say, for example, one of the examples I'm going to show you is the project is designing an after-school activity program. Okay, let's imagine that's the project. So the learners are going to design an after-school activity program. Their first step would be to think about who is the audience. So this would be the students at the school, and they would have to listen to those people, ask questions, learn about the audience, observe, interview them. Now, I had a group once that was a smaller group, and we didn't have anybody to ask. We had our imaginary audience, and we used artificial intelligence to create the role of the audience. This is one way you could get around it. So, for example, we asked the AI to be the audience and to make objections to our proposal, to our idea. And I thought it worked really well with the group because they were getting very difficult questions from the AI as if they were the audience, and say, for example, what about transport back home? How do we get the bus home if we're staying late after school? What about the basketball court? There's a big hole in it. That's a problem, right? Difficult challenges. The idea is that we're facing them right at the beginning. In design thinking, that's the idea. We need to empathize first with the real problem, and then we can move on to defining. Now, if you don't have AI in your classroom, which I totally understand, you could also be that role yourself as the teacher. You could prepare a bunch of objections. You know, you could say, what about this? Or what about the public transport home? What about, equipment? Do you have to pay for this? Right, lots of objections. And, this is a really good way to sort of get the thing started with step 1. Step 2, very simple, is about them refining their point of view. So they say, okay, we've got the problem. Now, how are we going to frame the solution, right? So after school's activity, maybe they have to make some adjustments in their ideas, but they're really going to be evaluating the information they learned in step 1. So in define, they're framing the point of view, they're questioning assumptions, right? And they're looking for patterns and insights and trying to find kind of like where we're going to start with this project. So now the project's getting underway. But what's interesting, guys, if you notice, is that we don't do any brainstorming until step 3. Now, this is what I really love about design thinking. It's collecting information first, empathizing, defining, and then brainstorming. If you brainstorm at the beginning, you're probably going to waste a lot of time, and a lot of ideas will not be relevant because you haven't thought about the audience yet or your own point of view. So if you ideate in the third stage, you're going to absolutely come up with many more ideas and much better ideas as well. And then the final two stages, 4 and 5, are kind of similar in a way, but prototype is where we test it quickly. Now, there's a really nice phrase here, which is think big, act small, and fail fast. What we're trying to do here is to teach our learners that it's okay to fail, but do it fast so you can learn and adjust. That's like life, right? They're going to have to learn this, especially teen learners in the next 5 or 6, 7 years. They're going to be working in companies. And they're going to have to really learn how to do this in the real world. So these are absolutely amazing, amazing tips for real life global skills as well. Someone's asked me to enlarge this. I'm not sure I can. I'm really sorry. While I'm presenting, it's difficult to enlarge it, but I will bring back to this slide at the end so you can take a screenshot, hopefully. Now, the testing stage at the end is where you actually do your presentation. This would be, for example, in Amanda's example, which is brilliant that I can use that, where you have the student doing the video. That's where you would test that with an audience and get that constructive feedback. So absolutely amazing opportunity to promote good constructive feedback, positive language. And, you are going to have a project that is much more refined than just brainstorm on the board and let's go for it. I will come back to this diagram later, guys. Don't worry if you would like to see it again. Now, I want you to imagine you're going to do a project, but you've had no time and you wrote your lesson plan on a Post-it note like this. We're going to stay with the same example of after-school activities. And look, I've done this before, okay? I'm guilty. I'm sure everyone else has as well, where we've had no time. We've had to, with a pen and paper, just quickly write the plan. And of course, it doesn't go well. Now, these steps are all important. Making groups, absolutely, right? Monitoring and helping. All of these steps are important. But if I did my project-based learning based on this plan, I'm pretty sure it will be chaos, essentially, right? If I give them the materials and I say, you're going to make a poster about after-school activities, go for it. Right, what are we doing here? Right, you will have a complete disaster. So by taking a design thinking approach, you're going to be going very carefully through those 5 steps and controlling, how much information and material the students have before moving on to the next step. So what if we change this Post-it note to be more, design thinking friendly? Now here, what I've done very simply as well, this is just another Post-it note, of course, but I have framed it now around with design thinking in mind. So what I've done very simply is put the 5 steps. I've got empathize, define, ideate, and then I'm writing actually what those mean. So for example, here I'm going to put the class into groups. We're going to have the key questions on the whiteboard from the audience. Again, you could use AI or yourself for that too. Have them answer those questions and share ideas, right? Then, of course, identifying the key issue. Then, of course, brainstorming, stressing there's no silly ideas, have them really kind of open their mind because it's a cycle. They can repeat the cycle. If they make a mistake, it's fine. That's part of learning and that's part of design thinking. Then you go through to prototype and then, of course, testing. So I'm going to give you some ideas later on how to make those kind of pop in the class. But here are some questions to ask yourself too. Think about, can I extract 100% from the materials I'm using? That's an interesting question always to ask yourself. What are the steps we can follow, right? Thinking about the different parts of the design thinking circle. Is there a circle to the process? Is there opportunity for critical thinking, for differentiation, right? Is there an opportunity for UDL? This is where you're going to add those excellent bits that I mentioned in the first slide into your project-based learning. Now, I'd like to show you kind of a real example of this. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you a book. This is an upcoming course from Macmillan called Global Innovators. And what I love about this is, but I didn't work on this, by the way. So this is just a fantastic example, really, of how design thinking can work in a project. So the first one I'm going to show you here very briefly is the after school activities program. And as you can see, we have the 5 stages of design thinking implemented into this project. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to show you another one, and then I'm going to go through that in more detail. So let's have a look at this project. This one is about designing a news service. Okay, cool topic, right? That's really interesting. And we've got the 5 steps of design thinking. Perfect. Let's go through them one by one. I'm going to show you how this would work in a class. So the first phase, of course, is empathize. Now, what I love about this, guys, is there's a brilliant opportunity here to create anticipation and engagement in your class, because steps 2 and 3 are watch the video. Does it mention any of your ideas? Now, if you tell the class, before we watch the video, I want you to answer these questions and see if you come up with the same topics that are mentioned in the video. When you say to them afterwards, right, are you ready to watch the video now? Do you want to check what you've got once you've shared ideas and everything? They're going to be much more likely to be interested. And yes, someone said predicting. They're going to be much more interested in watching that video. Now, imagine I go into the class and I say, right, guys, first we're going to watch this video. Okay, ready? Play. Right? They don't care what the video is. They don't know what it is. They're not engaged. So by using these design thinking questions, they're actually trying to predict what's in the video, and that will increase engagement. Also here, I love this, an empathy map. This is getting them thinking about who the users are. You know, how do students currently get news at their school? What kind of problems do students experience trying to get news, right? This is a really nice approach to the project. Get them started with ideas about who the audience are. Second stage is define. This is where brilliant language production can take place. So, for example, here it says, write 1 or 2 sentences that clearly define the problem, then choose the best definition. Now, this is absolutely amazing for just classic language production, having them write amazing, concise sentences, right? And then vote on the best one. This is absolutely brilliant. You could do that within the groups or as a class as a whole. It would work absolutely amazingly. And it's the second step to the design thinking process. So a brilliant complement to what we're doing. Now look at that. The third step is when the brainstorming starts. So they haven't even brainstormed yet, but they've got a ton of ideas and insights, right? Now, once you've got those ideas, you've defined the problem, right? For the news service in this example. That's when we're going to get them debating and agreeing after they brainstormed and obviously researched more. So this is about research, this is about brainstorming, debating, agreeing. And this is where you can really let them be free, right? This is where there's no silly ideas. You know, you can really express your opinion in any way. It's a safe space, right? And, you know, hopefully one of these is going to come to the surface and going to become the main idea for that group of how they're going to design this project. Then we come to the next phase. Now, before we get to the prototype phase, I just want to have a look at this as well. This is a brilliant design thinking skill, which is the use of positive language. Now, this is something I find very interesting, which is not just about being a good language speaker, but also being a good communicator. You don't need to be C1 level to be a fantastic communicator, right? You can be A2. And if you're using more positive language, more proactive language, right, you will definitely advance more. And these are skills that we can really help young learners, teen learners with from the very beginning. So instead of saying yes and, sorry, no, the other way around. Instead of saying yes, but, change it to yes and. Very, very simple ideas, but this is a great opportunity to implement that stuff into your project-based learning and your courses in general. And that's design thinking. Now, community phase, they could be designing their poster, the information booklet, the slideshow, whatever it is you decide. And this is where the design actually comes to the fore. And of course, they want to be testing it, seeing whether it's okay. This is the prototype phase after all. And then finally, test. And again, it's called test because they can fail and then try again. We want to encourage that as long as they learn from it, right? That's really, really important. So when they're in the testing phase, this is where you can really get them sort of presenting their ideas. And in a moment, I'm going to give you a nice idea for that to make it more interesting in the class. So how do we bring these things to life? I'm going to give you a couple of practical ideas to actually do some of the different stages in the classroom, right? So the first one, for example, as I already mentioned, have students produce, then predict and check their ideas. So before they do a listening, give them some clues, have them kind of guess what the video is about. That's a brilliant way to get engagement. They can listen to the video first without watching. and then guess what it's about, and then watch it, see if they can predict what the video looked like. It's another way of getting really good engagement. This one I love. They can recreate the video. So for example, imagine you divide the video in half. You give one half to a group, the other half to another group. They have to reenact their half of the video, and then they play it together and then compare to the original. I think that's an absolutely amazing way to get them really engaged in what the video says and what they're trying to say in the message. This is a fantastic thing to do. I've done a lot of that in my experience, and recreating stuff is really, really fun. Obviously, you can have a giant brainstorm on the whiteboard. Absolutely amazing. Encouraging communication skills, of course, you know, lots of feedback, listening, positive language. The speed presentation peer review. This is a really fun one, guys. Instead of having them come to the front of the class and just say, okay, this is my poster for like this, you can set up almost like a speed dating setup where everyone's in a circle on tables and they rotate and they have to present their news service in under a minute or something like that, or 2 minutes. And, you know, get them to move around really quickly and, you know, give feedback as fast as they can. So adding a little time element can be really interesting. Doing a shadow observation. So in the empathize phase, you could have them just walk around the school or even just think and imagine without saying anything and say all in silence, right? I know that can be tough, but it can be fun too. They can think about what the possible needs of their audience are, or they can go and observe. What are the news in the school at the moment? Is it a bulletin board? Is there a website? Things like this. Now, also, don't be afraid to ask teams to come up with the worst, most dangerous, most expensive idea. This is another really good way to avoid failing slowly, right? Have them think, right, what would be the worst idea? Right? This will really produce a lot of interesting ideas. And then they can flip that. Well, if they do the opposite, maybe that's the best idea. Interesting, critical thinking again. Give them 10 minutes to build a prototype, but without speaking. And perhaps you could say, right, you're going to design the poster, but with no pen. Right? You've got to use Lego blocks. They'll be like, what? And you can't speak. Putting interesting restrictions on students is a brilliant way to catch them unawares. And they'll be like, oh, okay, they're on their toes. They're thinking, right? And then, of course, put a time limit on it, 5 minutes, whatever it is. I like putting really silly time limits. So I'll say like, you've got 3 minutes and 40 seconds, something like that. It's really fun. And then the last one I really like as well. Don't be afraid to do this. Imagine 6 months from now and your project has completely failed. Why? This is a really nice reflective question, right? They can really think and reflect on what could have gone wrong if they do something the wrong way. So again, brilliant, brilliant critical thinking. So these are some of the ideas you can put into your project-based learning to really make the class pop. So finally, the template. Here we've got the 5 areas of design thinking. And basically in each one, I've got some interesting questions that you can ask yourself and your learners. And I've got some language support, sentence starters that you could have the learner start and then finish with their own ideas. So this is a really nice template that I think you could use in any project-based learning class. And you are implementing design thinking if you follow these 5 steps and rotate through them, right? This is kind of a template. And again, I'm going to bring it back to the final sort of diagram too. You know, if you kind of come back to this as well, making sure you're covering all those ideas, you know, I think you'll find it very, very gratifying. I think it's a really fantastic thing to do. I was doing this recently with a class, as I mentioned, and it's amazing to see them, you know, not understand that brainstorming, not yet. Nope, no design yet. We're thinking, we're analyzing, we're empathizing, defining. And honestly, the results are really great. So I hope that some of the ideas today will give you the inspiration to kind of try this out in your next project. I think you will get a lot out of it. And also, this is brilliant for finding solutions to problems in your life, by the way, as well. So you can use design thinking for your life too, not just teaching, but there we go. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for your participation. Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was really, really great. And I actually have one question from one of our participants, and he or she is asking if we can design think or apply design thinking for online learning. Do you think?
100%. Yeah. If it's online learning with a teacher, of course, you could do a project online. Absolutely. I mean, it would work perfectly well. In fact, you've got all the resources on the internet. it would be even easier, actually, to be honest with you. But if you're on your own, if you wanted to set them a project, then yeah, you'd have to teach the learner how to do design thinking and then give them that autonomy to try it themselves. And, you know, if they were online learning on their own, of course they could do this. Absolutely. You know, I did this when I was designing this presentation to a certain extent, right? I'm empathizing first with the audience. I'm thinking, right, these guys are teachers like me. I know what it's like to be in a classroom. Projects, oh my God, it could be chaos, right? So you always start with the empathy phase before you start brainstorming and stuff. So yeah, absolutely, it could work even on your own. You could do design thinking to find solutions for sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. This was really, really great. Now I think that most of us know that we can actually apply design thinking in our classrooms, in our life in general.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I really do. Yeah, it's brilliant. Okay.
Great. So much. Thank you so much, and so good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you again, Martin, as always. And yeah, again, thank you for everybody participating and being here today. Really appreciate it. Good luck with your teaching, guys. I hope you enjoy it, and good luck with your next project. I hope it goes very well for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take
Bye,
care.
Mike. Okay, guys, so I'll be sharing my screen again with you. Just one final message. Remember that in a couple of weeks, you're going to get your certificate of attendance and the virtual goodie bag. You're going to get lots of information there. Stay tuned. And if you have any problems, remember, you can always email us to eltwebinars@macmillaneducation.com, eltwebinars@macmillaneducation.com. Okay. And what do we have tomorrow? Tomorrow, we're going to be speaking about leadership. We have a keynote by Arturo Hernandez, and we will be talking about the enrollment toolkits with Nur Barasi. Okay, so that was it for today. I'll leave you with this little task here. If you could name one stage from design thinking in the chat, that would be great. And that was it. That was it for me. Empathize. That's great. Empathy, I think, is the most important one. And I will be seeing you guys very soon. Okay? Don't forget to be here tomorrow too. Every single talk is really, really interesting. And I think it's going to help you become a better teacher and improve the way you teach too. Okay, so see you guys. Thank you so much for being here, for participating, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.